experiences in
Hello
there.
and welcome to UMass Beyond the Classroom, a show designed to acknowledge and promote the many people at UMass Amherst whose hard work extends beyond the confines of the classroom and out into the real world. I'm your host and fellow student, Kevin Middleton. Today, we are joined by Communication Chair Professor Erica Char. Welcome to UMass Beyond the Classroom.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So Erica, what piqued your interest in the communication field?
Well, it started long ago when I was a college student. I was shopping around for majors and thought I would try out communication. For me, my goal was to be a broadcast journalist. I wanted to be a news anchor. That was my goal. And so I sort of structured my whole college experience around that goal, including working at my college television station and eventually helping to run my college television station, working at my college radio station, doing internships at radio stations and in news at a television affiliate in Rochester, New York. And then all those experiences culminated when I graduated in getting my first job, which was in radio. And the story of how I got it was pretty funny. Old-fashioned technology was key. I had a cassette player and I put a cassette tape into the cassette deck, pushed play and record, and read a bunch of news stories and sent that off with a cover letter to a station manager in a small station in northeastern Pennsylvania. And I did get that job.
That's awesome.
It is.
So I understand that you're focused a lot on gender and reality television. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I have a recent project that stems from my long-standing interest in the way that gender is depicted in the media and how that might shape our own views of gender roles. And I've done sort of a lot of different studies under that topic, including some analyses of content. So I watch a whole bunch of television shows, or for one study, I subscribed to video game magazines and I looked at all the ads that were there. And basically my research assistants and I code and keep track of what's present in that content and what's absent in that content. So the particular interest in reality shows came from one of those studies. I'm interested in how aggression is presented in the media, not just in physical forms, which most people study, but also in verbal forms, as well as in what we call social forms. And so social aggression is this notion that we can also harm each other by diminishing people in some way. By starting rumors, by gossiping, by excluding people. I always think of it as kind of the mean girls syndrome, right? So there's this sort of gendered aspect of how we aggress that I'm very interested in. So I did a study of reality shows, things like Real World and Real Housewives and Keeping Up with the Kardashians. And I looked at how aggression was performed by men and women as they appeared on that show. And then I did a study where I linked up whether people watch those shows and their own views about whether it's okay to be aggressive in those various ways. And there were statistical correlations between the amount of time you spend watching those reality shows and your views of whether verbal aggression and physical aggression are okay and just sort of normal, accepted parts of living, of life.
Yeah. Was there someone in particular that led you to start researching gender study?
Yeah, I think my interest in gender comes from my own experience as a woman, for sure. But also, like a lot of scholars, I've been sort of influenced by the people with whom I studied. And so when I worked in radio for a couple years, but knew I wanted to be a professor. So I was reading about graduate programs in communication and media studies. And I decided on Syracuse University and the Newhouse School of Communication because of one person in particular and his research profile. His name is George Comstock, and he, at the time and still, I think is one of the world's leading scholars of children and media and also of media violence. And he taught a course that I thought succinctly described exactly what I wanted to study and know about, which was called The Social Impact of Television. And so learning about gender was, I think, sort of a natural progression from wondering how media shape our lives and that one particular aspect of our lives that I've always really been interested in.
Yeah, it's clear that you've done a lot of research. Have you published any books about what you've been studying about?
Yeah. So that same person, my mentor at Syracuse University, George Comstock, and I wrote 3 books together.
Oh, wow.
One we started when I was a grad student, and it's called Television, What's On, Who's Watching, and What It Means. Actually, I hate that title, but we didn't come up with the title, the publisher did. It's kind of a clunky title, but it's a pretty cool book. It was published in 1999, and some of it's probably outdated now. But it's about, as the title signifies, the medium of television and its role in society and how it's evolved over time and why we spend time with it and what we get from spending time with it. Our next book together was on media and politics, which I think is a really interesting question. And so it's called The Psychology of Media and Politics. And it has to do with how individuals learn about the political world, whether to participate in it, whether like ads for, say, Hillary Clinton or another candidate for president might shape our views, whether we watch the debates on television, whether these days we participate in social media around politics, and sort of how individuals decide whether and how to participate in politics. And then our last book is on children. It's called Media and the American Child, and it's all about how young people spend time with media, not just television, but all forms of media, why they're drawn to it, what they like about it, what they don't like about it, what types of portrayals they're likely to encounter from watching television and spending time with other media forms, and then a little bit on the influence. And then finally, a little bit more on sort of interventions, like if we know that media is associated with some sort of problematic outcome, what can we do about it? What can parents do? What can politicians and policymakers do? And what can teachers do? And so that's what that book is all about. I also edited a book on my area of the discipline that's known as media effects. And I'm working on a new proposal for a new book right now.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So besides children and politics, are there any other areas of television that you've been researching?
Yeah, so violence is one of my interests for sure. And what I try to do in the area of media violence is ask sort of innovative, I like to think they're innovative, questions that haven't already been studied. So I do care deeply about what we probably think most quickly about the question of media violence, which is, does media violence contribute to aggression? I read all that stuff. I've done a couple studies about that. It's something I care about. But in my own work, I try to ask sort of different questions that are related to that, but a little bit understudied. And so I usually throw gender in there as something that we should consider that's not always on the table in those studies. So I've done some work about this concept called hypermasculinity, which is, a certain way of performing masculinity that tends to be kind of tough and macho and a little callous and a little connected to aggression. And so I measured whether young people's, display of hypermasculinity might have to do with how they respond to media violence. I also have done some studies about what people think of media violence. So when I work with young people, I'm interested in this thing called the third person effect, which is the tendency with young people and old to think that other people are negatively influenced by the media, but not ourselves. We're somehow above it. It's somebody else's problem. So I've worked with early adolescents to try to find out, do they think that people in general their age or younger are affected by violence in video games? The answer is yes, they do. Do they think that they themselves are affected by violent video games? The answer is no, they don't. So I'm really fascinated by that split in our minds, and it's not just young people, it's all kinds of members of the population that tend to think that they themselves are above media influence, but other people are in the throes of it.
Yeah, it's really important too, especially dealing with kids and violence. Do you by any chance have any UMass students helping you with your research?
I do. I'm glad you asked, because one of my passions is actually connecting the classroom to the community. And so I have an ongoing outreach program where every spring I teach a class at UMass for communication seniors that's called Media Violence. It's a 400 level class, so it's people who are seniors and have had a lot of exposures to lots of different ideas in the classroom to that time. And what we do in that class, for those people in the class who want to participate, it's an optional sort of additional course credit. we get together as a small group and we design a series of lesson plans. So we put ourselves in the role of teachers and facilitators, and we come up with ways to introduce some of the topics that we're learning in class to sixth graders in the community. And so not only do we design lesson plans, but we go to sixth grade at a couple of local schools. And last year we also went to fourth grade to see what fourth graders are thinking about our topics. And so we facilitate these interactive lesson plans where we're both learning from the young people, the children, and hearing what they have to say, but also sharing what we have to say about the topic. It's all the college students that do the talking. I'm just sort of behind the scenes. And the college students go in groups to facilitate these media literacy lessons. And it's a pretty cool program, I think. I think the college students get a lot out of it in terms of their own mastery of the material, their own confidence in what they know, and their facility with working with young people, and their ability to sort of, make a difference, because this is one way, I think, to take what we know and what we're learning here at the university and help make a difference in the community. And it's great for the school too, because I think teachers are really called upon these days to be media experts because kids are spending so much time with media, but teachers aren't always trained in media studies. And so I think our program is sort of a nice, easy way to address some of these pressing issues for some local teachers without them having to, make up their own resources or come up with their own materials to raise these topics.
Yeah. So being a professor yourself, what do you think your favorite aspect of your job is as a researcher and a professor at UMass?
I love my job. I think being a professor is the best job on the planet. I really and truly do. And it's hard to answer because there are so many things I love. I love being a scholar. It's really cool to do studies and sort of the process of discovery. I'm always, spending time with media myself and wondering things like, is this common? How might people respond to that? How might this affect people or not? And so it's cool to put those observations to test as a scholar. But I think even above that, how much I love that, I would say my favorite thing about being a professor is spending time with college students. It's just so fun to, have the chance to shape some of the impressions of college students, their ideas about themselves and the world in which they live, track them as they graduate and get jobs and send me notes to say what they're up to. I get a tremendous amount of gratification from those interactions.
Yeah, that's great. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. I would like to thank Professor Char for speaking with us.
You're welcome. Thanks for having me.
And thank you for joining us today at UMass Beyond the Classroom. I'm your host, Kevin Middleton, signing off.
Around advertising and
Oh,
commercial.
wow.